All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something truly fascinating, a dark academic journey straight into the mercurial legendarium. For those of you studying the philosophy of nihilism, get ready, because we're going to explore a really profound evolution. We're talking about the harrowing transition from passive to active nihilism, and ultimately to sovereign creation. And we're looking at all of this through the lens of a grim Gothic fable that heavily channels Nietzschean philosophy. If you've ever wondered what happens when the very structures of meaning completely collapse and we're left staring into the absolute void, well, this explainer is going to map out exactly how that psychological and alchemical dissolution unfolds.
Now, to really grasp the philosophy here, we first have to ground ourselves in the world of our fable. Picture the village of Weimar. It is freezing cold, and the air is thick with the scent of vinegar and old parchment. As the text so vividly puts it, the clock in the bell tower did not strike midnight, it bled it. Up high, standing on the jagged crown of the Brocken, is a figure known simply as the Baron. He's standing there, watching as the sky literally rips open to reveal the great star of negation. This is a motionless celestial body radiating this cold anti-light, casting pitch-black shadows upward into the heavens. And this isn't just some spooky atmospheric setting, right? For our philosophical framework, this is the vivid visual representation of the universe's fundamental silence just crashing down on human civilization.
Okay. Let's dive into this next concept. At the very heart of the Baron's worldview is his massive critique of what he calls the Iron City. This is an automated era, a monument to industrial cynicism. Within this Iron City, individuals are basically reduced to mere biological machines, governed by this incredibly clinical, rigid grid of bureaucratic control. You can think of it as the Nietzschean death of God, transformed into the literal dissolution of the word. It's a system entirely designed to suppress the divine spark. It forces people to project their internal power completely outward, onto the state, onto the law, onto external logic, instead of recognizing their own internal sovereignty. It is, quite simply, mechanized captivity masking itself as civilization.
So the Baron looks down at this supposed static, divine order, and he just sees right through it. To him, these are nothing more than assumptions built on sand. It's a totally artificial, industrialized structure, and its sole purpose? To hide our own terrifying interior emptiness. Now, the Baron's perspective is brutally cynical, for sure, but it's also incredibly clarifying. He understands that this dehumanizing logic absolutely has to collapse if the human soul is ever going to evolve. The illusion of meaning, it just has to be shattered.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophical conflict of our fable, the clash between memory and negation. We have two distinct archetypes here, both responding to the total collapse of meaning. On one side, we've got the lore keeper. He represents passive nihilism, a desperate witness frantically trying to preserve a history that the universe is already busy erasing. On the flip side, we have the shadow bard. He is the ultimate embodiment of active nihilism, scavenging the ruins in the mire. Let's start by looking at our passive witness.
I want you to really picture the lore keeper here. He is, physically and more importantly, spiritually trapped behind this rusted, jagged iron gate. He's kneeling in the dust, his face completely haggard. He's clutching these scorched scrolls as if they were literal holy relics, just frantically scribbling down the names of the fallen. He truly believes that by engaging in this obsessive archiving, he can somehow hold back the void. But, as the source text reveals, his sturdy towers of remembrance, they're just an illusion.
Listen to the Baron's absolutely brutal diatribe to the lore keeper here. He says, "You sit there behind your rusted iron gate, clutching scorched scrolls as if they were holy relics, yet you are nothing but a desperate witness to a ghost. You are the spiritual descendant of Dr. Hess, weeping over blank white vellum because you lack the strength to face the silence." Wow. The Baron is completely dismantling the scribe's efforts. He sees this frantic archiving as the ultimate act of cowardice, a total, pathetic inability to face the epistemological dissolution that's just washing over the world.
The Baron doesn't stop there. He continues his mockery, telling him, "You believe your pathetic philological vanity can preserve a history the universe is already erasing? Your stored truth is just a game of ruined telephone played across the graves of ancestors you never knew. Truth is not a grain to be saved, it is a borrowed silence." It's harsh, but he's forcing the lore keeper to confront the reality that historical archives simply cannot save a soul.
And the real tragedy of the lore keeper is that he remains totally trapped by his own psychological refusal to accept reality. As the quote says, meaning is a fragile layer of paint, and is being peeled away rapidly by a world that no longer possesses a moral anchor.
The history the Lorekeeper is trying so desperately to save, it's already been fundamentally erased by the universe. He is the ultimate passive nihilist, endlessly suffering because he just cannot let go of a dead world.
So, you might be wondering, what is actively causing this erasure? Enter the Great Star of Negation. When the Baron points his iron staff at this star and utters his cosmic creed, it acts as the ultimate catalyst. It's the stone that grinds institutional certainty into absolute dust. This cold anti-light triggers a profound epistemological dissolution. It literally dissolves the very concept of stored truth, completely exposing the fundamental emptiness of all human declarations.
Under the influence of this star, what we call the silence of the archive begins. The gray spirit visits Weimar, and its silver vapor makes the very air relentlessly honest. This right here is the ultimate philological act. It's returning language to the primordial silence from which it was borrowed in the first place. Philosophy just becomes mere conjecture. History? It dissolves into rumor.
So the crucial point is how this epistemological dissolution actually affects the pillars of society. Take the priest, for example. He delivers a sermon on the eternal soul, but the words are instantly stripped of meaning the second they leave his lips. They reach the congregation as just meaningless noise, and the crowd? They don't riot. They just watch with polite bewilderment. Similarly, the magistrate's decrees of law soften and buckle, met only with this gentle, philosophical uncertainty. The rigid logic of both church and state is rendered entirely void.
While these massive institutions collapse and the Lorekeeper continues to weep, we turn our attention to the mire. Kneeling right there in the black sludge is the Shadow Bard, who is the true agent of active nihilism. He doesn't seek to honor the ruins. No, he actively seeks to strip them of their essence. He willingly facilitates this epistemological dissolution because he understands that to find the raw truth of the self, you absolutely must peel away those fragile layers of paint completely.
The Shadow Bard looks at everyone cowering in their dissolving temples and totally mocks their traditional sense of courage. He declares, heroic ideals are merely rotting corpses in a world that has finally realized its own fundamental silence. Clinging to old moral anchors is just absurd to him. The Bard proves that if you want to create something entirely new, you must first be a willing and masterful agent of destruction. You literally have to face the absolute void without blinking.
Let's move to the next slide and see how this builds into an alchemical evolution of the soul. Step 1 is the death of meaning. That's the shattering of the mechanized captivity we saw in the Iron City. Step 2 is epistemological dissolution, fully embracing the silence of the archive, where all those external truths fail. And it's only by surviving these grueling stages of negation that you can reach Step 3, sovereign creation, which happens in a space known as the Uncanny Valley.
Now, to actually reach that final stage, the Bard stands at the threshold of the Ashen Wastes. And right there, he discovers a jagged, translucent artifact called the Key of Abandoned Prayer. It is quite literally forged from cold silence. This striking imagery is basically telling us that the tools you need for future creation, they aren't found in the warmth of old faiths. Not at all. They're found in the freezing reality of unanswered prayers and absolute, total self-reliance.
With this key in hand, the Bard effortlessly slips into the Uncanny Valley. The text explicitly contrasts his choice with the masses here. While the suffocating conformity of the herd keeps them cowering in their dissolving temples, the Bard makes a very different choice. He deliberately chooses the dangerous risks of the unknown. He steps right into that void, not with dread, but with absolute purpose. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it defines his transformation. By stepping into the Uncanny Valley, the Bard evolves from a mere entertainer into the awakened mercurial spirit. He has completely transcended the industrial captivity of the Iron City to become a fully self-mastered creator. He's claimed the divine spark for himself. He now relies solely on his own undeniable internal authority, rather than desperately searching for truth in external stored records that just can't answer him anymore.
Inside the Uncanny Valley, the Bard finds an empty ledger. And when the light of his key hits the page, words written in invisible ink start to appear. Because he has successfully integrated his internal shadows, this valley is no longer a place of terror. Instead, it becomes his own personal workshop. The blank, meaningless void of the universe is completely reframed. It's simply a vast inkwell for his own creations, for his next great deceptions. He is now truly the master of a world without anchors.
And that brings us to the ultimate thesis of this Gothic fable. You know, this isn't just a story. It's a really profound challenge to all of you studying philosophy. The Iron City is going to collapse. The archive will inevitably go silent. External truth will be reduced to mere rumor. So I want to leave you with this thought. When that fragile layer of paint finally peels away, and you are forced to face a universe of absolute silence, what will you choose to write upon the blank white vellum of existence?